You walk out to your garden in the middle of July, coffee in hand, and you see it happening again. The tomatoes have stalled. Right when they should be exploding with growth, they're just sitting there. The peppers look tired. The lower leaves are yellowing at the edges, and you're standing there thinking, what am I doing wrong? You bought the good compost. You installed drip irrigation. You spent your weekends pulling weeds by hand because you don't believe in spraying chemicals on food your family is going to eat. You did everything the books told you to do, but the results feel heavy. They feel like a fight. And then you glance over the fence at your neighbor's garden, or you walk past a wild patch of land at the edge of the woods, and you see this effortless vitality that you just cannot seem to replicate in your raised beds. It's discouraging. It makes you feel like maybe you just don't have the touch. I need you to take a deep breath and stop blaming yourself. You are not failing. You're just working from an incomplete map. If this is your first time here, welcome. We explore forgotten natural sciences and the hidden laws that modern agriculture left behind. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's get into it. For 100 years, we've been taught that gardening is pure chemistry. Add enough nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and the plant has no choice but to grow. That's the logic. So we treat our soil like a mixing bowl. Dump in the right recipe, stand back, wait. But soil is not just a chemical sponge. It's a living, breathing environment that depends on signals to tell plants when to drink, how to grow, and where to send their roots. And in our obsession with perfect, tidy garden boxes, we've accidentally done something devastating. We've isolated our soil. We've cut it off from the subtle, natural electrical charge that runs through the earth. We created a dead circuit. Your plants survive on the food you give them, but they don't thrive because the energy isn't flowing. I need you to shift your perspective for a moment. Instead of seeing soil as a dead medium that holds roots in place, I want you to see it for what it actually is. Your soil is a battery. Every handful of dirt is packed with minerals, salts, and moisture. In physics, that's called an electrolyte. It's the exact same substance inside the car battery sitting in your driveway or the AA in your wall clock. The energy potential is already there in your raised bed, was waiting to be tapped. But right now, the switch is in the off position. We're going to turn it back on. This isn't some gimmick I invented to get views. This is ancient, forgotten science. It's the same principle Alessandro Volta discovered hundreds of years ago. When you place two different metals inside a conductive medium, a lemon, a potato, the damp soil in your garden, you create electron movement. You create a current. Nature uses this current to stimulate growth, to signal roots where to go, and to help plants pull nutrients from the ground. In the wild, this happens naturally through mineral veins, groundwater flow, and microbial networks. In our insulated garden boxes, we broke that connection. We're simply going to rebuild it using the most basic materials you can find at any hardware store. Here's what you need. Two things. First, copper. I prefer solid, unshielded copper wire, something like 10 or 12 gauge, the kind used for household grounding. If you have old copper pipe lying around, that works too. Second, zinc. The easiest source is a standard galvanized steel tent stake or a large galvanized nail. Galvanized just means it's been dipped in zinc, which is exactly what we need for the chemical reaction. That's it. No kits, no special orders. Probably $5 at the hardware store, maybe less if you dig through your garage. Now let's build this. Go out to your raised bed. Take a moment to figure out where north is. You're going to place your galvanized steel stake, your zinc, at the north end of the bed. Drive it into the soil so it's firm, leaving just the head or a small section exposed above the surface. Now walk to the south end and place your copper there. If you're using pipe, drive it in. If you're using wire, you can coil it around a wooden stake or simply bury a length of it along the southern edge. The distance doesn't have to be precise, but you want them on opposite ends to encourage flow through the entire root zone. Now comes the critical part, closing the circuit. You need to connect that zinc stake on the north end to the copper piece on the south end. Run a length of copper wire along the surface of the soil, or bury it just a couple of inches deep so it's out of the way. Wrap one end tightly around the galvanized stake and the other end around your copper piece. Make sure it's metal-to-metal contact. If your wire has plastic insulation, strip it back so you get a clean, solid connection. The moment you tighten that wire, the system is live. You won't hear a hum. You won't see a spark. The voltage is incredibly low, usually less than 1 volt, but you just turned your passive box of dirt into an active energy field. You've created a path of least resistance for electrons to move, and your plants are sitting right in the middle of that current. Before you scroll away, do me a favor. If you're finding value in this, tap that like button. It tells the algorithm to show this to more gardeners who need it. All right, let's keep going. Now I want to walk you through the year so you can see what this actually looks like in practice. Picture your bed in early May. You've just transplanted your tomatoes and sown your rows of beans. Normally, this is the anxiety window. You watch the seedlings wilt a little in the sun. You worry about a late frost. You wait for them to recover from transplant shock. But this year, with the copper-zinc circuit buried quietly under the mulch, the timeline shifts. That droopy phase, where the plants just sit there doing nothing for a week, it's shorter. The soil energy is stimulating the root tips immediately. Within 3 or 4 days, the leaves perk up and take on a deep, rich green. They're not struggling to find the soil. The soil is actively reaching out to greet them. Fast forward to mid-June. This is when the bugs usually show up. You walk out expecting to find aphids on the kale or caterpillars on the tomatoes. But look closely at the stems of your plants in the electrified bed. They're thicker than usual. They feel sturdy, almost woody near the base. This is what happens when a plant produces high bricks, natural sugars, efficiently. Once a plant with strong electrical conductivity moves minerals faster and builds cell walls that are simply harder for pests to chew through. You might see 1 or 2 insects, but you won't see an infestation. The plant is broadcasting a signal of health, not distress, and predators move on. By August, the difference is undeniable. In a standard bed, this is when plants start looking tired. The lower leaves go crispy and brown. Production slows down. The heat beats them into submission. But look at the bed with the wire. Growth is still pushing upward. Flowering hasn't stopped. It's like the plants have access to a reserve tank of stamina. You're not seeing those giant watery vegetables that rot in 2 days. You're seeing dense, heavy fruit that feels solid in your hand. The yield isn't just bigger, it's consistent. And while your neighbor is ripping out scorched tomato vines, yours are still setting new flowers. You haven't added extra fertilizer. You haven't changed your watering schedule. You just kept the circuit closed, and the plants responded by finishing the race as strong as they started. But the real test of any system isn't how it performs when the weather is perfect. Anyone can grow a decent zucchini when the rain falls gently and the temperatures sit in the mid-70s. The real test comes when the weather turns against you. We all know that feeling in late July or August when the heat dome settles over your region. The air feels thick, the soil cracks and the sun stops feeling like a friend and starts feeling like a weight pressing down on your garden. In a standard raised bed, this is when you see the fainting. You walk out at noon and the squash leaves are plastered to the ground. You water, but they can't drink fast enough to offset the evaporation. They survive, but they're stressed, and stress invites disease. But walk over to the bed where you buried the copper and zinc. The difference is subtle at first, and then you see it. The leaves hold their tension. They're upright. The plant isn't fainting because the electrical stimulation has encouraged a root system that goes deeper and drinks more efficiently. The connection to the Earth's natural current seems to help the plant regulate its internal water pressure. It's resilient. It doesn't need you to rescue it 3 times a day with a hose. It's tapping into a stability that goes well below the top few inches of mulch. This resilience also buys you time on the other end of the season. When that first frost warning hits in October, we usually panic. We run outside with sheets and blankets trying to save what we can. But plants grown in an electrified system tend to develop a higher concentration of minerals and sugars in their sap. In simple terms, they have better natural antifreeze. I've seen tomato plants in these beds shrug off a light frost that turned the unconnected plants in the next row black overnight. They're not invincible. Winter comes for everyone, but this system gives you 2, maybe 3 extra weeks. That's 2 more weeks of fresh sauce, 2 more weeks of green beans. It turns a catastrophic weather event into a manageable inconvenience. It gives you peace of mind that your food supply isn't going to collapse just because the weatherman missed his forecast by 5 degrees. At the end of the day, we don't grow food just to save a few dollars on tomatoes. We grow because we want to know exactly what goes into our bodies. When you eat a vegetable grown in an energized bed, you're eating something that reached its full genetic potential. It tastes different. It's denser. It feels like real fuel. There's a quiet power in knowing you did this without relying on a supply chain that stretches halfway around the world. You didn't need imported fertilizer. You didn't need chemical pest control. You just needed some wire, a couple of stakes, and the soil in your own backyard. That's what independence looks like. It's not a bunker. It's a plate full of food you grew with your own hands using a system built on physics, not purchases. Now here's what I want you to do. Don't go out and tear up your whole garden tomorrow. That's what makes people feel overwhelmed and quit. Start small. Pick 1 raised bed, maybe just 1 row of peppers. Go to the hardware store, spend the $5 on wire and stakes and set it up. Treat it like an experiment. Watch it compared to the rest of your garden. Let the results convince you, not me. If it works, scale it up next year. If it doesn't feel right, you've only lost a few minutes of your time. But I have a feeling that once you see how the leaves stand tall in the midday sun, and once you taste that first harvest, you'll understand. You'll realize you haven't just been growing food. You've been reconnecting to the source. If this changed the way you see the ground beneath your feet, subscribe and hit that like button. We're dedicated to uncovering the forgotten sciences and natural laws that have been buried by time. Let's grow a more resilient future together. The next piece of the puzzle drops very soon.